The title of these kinds of lessons is Practical English. In other words, we look at a subject, one that's, we look at a subject and we look at the language that's practical for that subject. So in the past 3-4 weeks, we're still at 25. In the past 3 or 4 weeks, we've been looking at a lot of biology, starting with the infectious diseases lesson. Previously, last week, we looked at sports and the science of strength conditioning, the science of bodybuilding, and we touched on nutrition. So now we'll come back to that again. Everything that you have learned in the first lesson on infectious diseases, we are building on. We learned in the previous lesson on the strength conditioning, bodybuilding. In other words, what we're really focusing on is how to protect our health. So if we look at like Western medicine, the Western medical scientific approach, and the Chinese or Eastern traditional medical approach or philosophy or worldview, certainly very different. And I think that we need to learn from each other. So Chinese traditional medicine says that drinking hot water is good and drinking cold water is bad. And there is some Western scientific studies that confirm that. And I'm sure there's scientific studies here in Asia, China, that confirm that as well. Our body has a normal resting temperature. We should be around 36. We should know what our resting temperature is. We should be somewhere around 36 degrees. We're pretty hot. Internally, anyway. And so if we drink cold water, this kind of disrupts the body's natural state. I'm not really I'm not really an expert on a lot of the Chinese traditional medicine. It is something that I'm learning about, something that I'm interested in. And so what Western science and the science of nutrition have been talking about in great detail for the last 10, 20 years, I suppose, since the obesity epidemic. We talked about the obesity epidemic last week, how a generation, the generation that lives today is much more obese and weaker, having all kinds of family, emotional, mental problems. The world is going crazy, and people are unhappy. People are overweight. People are trying to manage their weight. They're putting in a lot of effort in terms of dieting and exercising, or they're working too hard. They're working, 10, 12 hours a day, and they feel very tired, and they're putting on weight, and they feel unhappy. So the Western medical, let's say, psychiatric solution to that are prescription drugs that change the chemical makeup of our brains, or medical prescription drugs to cure some kind of disease. And the Chinese approach is more use natural ingredients, drink lots of teas, and different kinds of berries and herbs. And this may have played a significant role in China's, recovery from the coronavirus epidemic. And that makes me quite interested in this subject. So we want to use traditional Western science, the scientific method, I should say, to understand what it is that certain foods do for our bodies. And this can help us overcome our social problems as well as our, medical problems, I think. When people learn to stop indulging in different kinds of foods and different kinds of lifestyles that slowly over time really cause a serious problem in ways that we don't understand. So the solution is the problem itself. The effects of the problem are very complicated, but the solution is actually quite simple. It's eating what the natural world, Mother Nature, if you want to call it that, has provided for us. We'll be going through 4 parts. The essentials of survival are our energetic bodies. Part 2, our vital organs and digestive system, what happens to food when we consume it. Part 3, the science of nutrition and how food affects the brain. This is what I think is the most interesting aspect. And part 4, types of foods, calories, and essential nutrients. The most practical information I can give you tonight on how to live your life. So again, there's the worksheet. I sent it to all the chats. Let's look at the words. We've got absorption. To absorb means like a cloth, a towel absorbs water. And when you water a plant, the soil, the water goes into the soil and the water is absorbed into the roots. So it has to do with, taking, our bodies taking the chemicals, the nutrients, from the food and turning it into a chemical, basically. An amino acid is just a kind of a nutrient, an important one. You want to look on the ingredient labels for what the amino acid content is. This is a really important one. Bloodstream. So blood is the fluid that runs through our veins when we bleed. What is blood for? Blood is to carry the nutrients through the body. Our bodies are 60% water, right? So blood is just as much a part of our physical being, I suppose. And we can eat certain kinds of foods that deliver nutrients that give our brain energy when it needs it, or our muscles protein, and certainly when we're fighting off illnesses too. Antibodies are carried through the bloodstream. Calories, we'll learn about that. A unit of measurement for how much energy is contained in a single serving of a particular kind of a food, like an orange, for example. Right? An orange contains energy, contains nutrients, contains vitamins. Carbohydrate, again, it's another kind of nutrient. It is the primary source of energy in most foods that we eat. Digestion. There's 2 parts to converting food into energy. There's digestion, breaking down food, and absorption, taking the chemical ingredients, nutrients, into the bloodstream to be taken to where it needs to go in the body. An enzyme, you might hear about this. Enzyme is just part of digestion. It's kind of a chemical that breaks down food. And they talk about how certain foods promote certain enzymes. So if we have when we talk about the obesity epidemic and people with mood disorders, maybe there's something wrong with their digestive system where food is not being properly digested and absorbed. And if we eat foods that contain enzymes, we might assist in the digestion and absorption and metabolism of food, turning food into energy, right? The faster we can turn food into energy, the better we feel, and the less we need to eat, and the more work we can get done, and the better we'll feel, the better we'll look, because we'll be burning food, and we'll be burning the food that we eat rather than having the food be converted into fat. Like for some people with hormonal disorders, they eat in small quantities, and yet because their bodies lack the correct hormones, people with diabetes don't get the energy, or they can't regulate the glucose, and they go into a coma and so on. So an enzyme is part of the digestion process. It's important for digestion. Glucose, carbohydrate. Carbohydrate is broken down into glucose. So this piece of orange here contains a serving of vitamins. It is a carbohydrate, and the sugar, it's a sweet kind of a fruit, so it contains a glucose. I can eat a small piece of orange and feel good for about 5 or 10 minutes. Hormone, I've been talking about that. A hormone is we'll look at what kind of hormones do what sorts of things. When you think about your growing, like how young children grow, how babies grow, and how adolescents grow into adults, that's all hormonally determined. And the way we feel is hormonally determined as well. An ingredient, when you check the list on the back for what it contains, things like caffeine, sugar, artificial ingredients. When you're cooking and you want to make a soup or something like that, the ingredients would be water and salt and fish and vegetables. Okay. Your intestines, part of the digestion system. Liver, part of the digestion system. A macronutrient and a micronutrient. So this orange here, because it contains because it contains carbohydrates, and because it contains carbohydrates, it is a macronutrient, and because it contains vitamins, it's a micronutrient. The difference between them is that macronutrients we need to eat in large quantities. Carbohydrates we need to eat in large quantities. Micronutrients, we only need a few of them. If we eat too much of them, it might make us sick or might do nothing. Metabolism, it's really just part of the digestive process. When it comes to converting food into energy. So we take the nutrients out of foods, and those things support bodily processes like thinking and breathing and fighting disease. And then there's the energy that we need to do work, like to run. Metabolism is the converting of food into energy in simplest terms, whereas absorption of foods into nutrients to support the different organs is absorption. Nutrients. So, this is an orange. It's a macronutrient. It contains micronutrients. It's the good stuff. Obesity, overweight. Protein, a macronutrient. It provides energy. A stimulant. It's a drug. Like tea contains caffeine. And if you drink caffeine, if you drink tea late at night, even though it doesn't really contain any calories, it gives you mental energy. Or it stimulates, it excites. The stomach, part of the digestive system, a vitamin, a micronutrient, and the immune system, part of the bloodstream that fights disease. So you can translate those. And down below we see the diagram of the 6 essential nutrients. We've got the micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals and water. I'll look at a bigger picture of that later, but that's for you. And the macronutrients, fats, carbohydrates, proteins. So part one, essentials of survival, our energetic bodies, overeating and obesity, processed foods, hunger, dieting, malnourishment. Key words of what's coming up ahead. So the essentials of survival. Our bodies take energy from all of these sources: food, water, air, warmth, and sleep. When we're feeling low on energy, we can look to any one of these available sources of energy. You can breathe more, breathe clean air, have a snack, have a glass of water, have a nap. So, to put things into perspective, our bodies are made of 60% water and 20% fat. And then the remaining 20% is a combination of protein, carbohydrates, minerals, and vitamins. When we live in a clean environment, eat a healthy, balanced diet, rest, and exercise regularly, our bodies are at peak performance levels. So when people talk about detoxing from processed foods, getting out of the cities and spending time in the forest where the air is much more rich in oxygen, and walking, they feel younger, they feel happier. All of those, problems that they thought they had seem to just vanish. Overeating and obesity. Our bodies always require food energies to support our waking activities. Every day we need to eat. Try not eating for a day. Try not eating for longer than a few hours, and immediately you will feel some discomfort. Okay? Some of us can get used to not eating. It takes maybe practice. It takes some conditioning if that's something that you want to try. But initially, in the very beginning, if you're conditioned to eat every 2 or 3 hours, or you're conditioned to eat very large meals, and you try to cut down, you try to diet, your body is going to resist that. Your body expects a kind of level of food intake. Now, the problem with our modern day society, with the convenience of processed foods, fast foods, manufactured and sold by food manufacturers, industrial food manufacturers, is they want to attract customers by providing them with what looks like a large serving of food. But then they need to cut costs at the same time. So, and then they also advertise to us. We might not actually be hungry, but we see an advertisement of, we see a package of chips or biscuits in the office, and suddenly we start to feel hungry because of the way that it's presented, right? So anyway, we often overestimate our hunger cravings, and the hunger is an emotional state of being. And so it causes us emotional stress, and therefore we eat to be happy. When we consume more food than required, our bodies will store the food energy for later use as fat. Simple as that. Okay? So, they tell us to diet, and it's all in the mind, I suppose. How we feel about how hungry we are. Science can tell us what the appropriate amount of food is to actually support the energy that we need. So don't believe everything that they tell you. Avoid everything in this picture. Many food manufacturers present their products as healthy choices. So they say on the package, contains vitamins and proteins and calcium. Many food manufacturers present their products as healthy choices, misinforming consumers into buying foods that they shouldn't be eating. Especially to children. Watch out for that. Packaged foods, because children don't know how to control their emotions. And so if you give them something that actually contains stimulants and too much sugar, they're going to get angry. Packaged foods are often high in calories and low in nutrients, resulting in feelings of hunger, low energy, and gaining weight. So you can eat this stuff and still feel hungry. I know this because I grew up on a diet of this kind of thing. The science of nutrition helps us recognize which foods to eat more of and which foods to stop eating. Hunger. Hunger is real. Hunger, you have to listen to it. But I think in today's society, with the food that is available to us, we have to practice self-control and eat less than we think we should, because we have been taught to want to eat more than we should. The feeling of hunger can oftentimes be remedied with better breathing, exercise, drinking water. In other words, the feeling of hunger is the feeling of needing energy, and we can get energy from oxygen, and we can get energy from water. We do need nutrients. If we try not eating, we deprive our bodies of nutrients, and that will hurt us. So, light snacks, natural food sources, fruits and vegetables, everything that you see in this photograph. We see, we see carrots, we see grapes, we see tomatoes, we see lemons, citrus fruits, asparagus, berries, and cheeses, or eggs, okay? A balanced combination of macronutrients and micronutrients. Foods that are brightly colored contain, they're rich in vitamins. This is what this is how nature supports us. They say, eat these foods. Look at how bright and colorful and tasty they are, right? The brightly colored foods give us all kinds of nutrients. And we think that it comes down to just burning calories, like eat a piece of bread, eat noodles, eat rice. Yes, that contains, it contains the food energy that we need, but it doesn't have the nutrients. And we can get just as much energy from foods that are low in calories and rich in nutrients, vitamins. Now, on the other hand, people have misconceptions about avoiding foods that are essential for healthy body function. The low-fat diets, people that just eat salads, eat vegetables, are depriving their brain of fat and protein, and it needs a daily supply of that. So when people deprive their bodies of certain essential nutrients, for example, carbohydrates and proteins and fats, they can experience health problems like fatigue and malnourishment. So as I said, our bodies can live without food for a very long time. People can live on stored food energy in fat cells and body tissues for a very long time before dying of starvation. But very quickly, if people don't get the regular supply of essential nutrients, they become vulnerable to disease and organ failure. So I wouldn't recommend these no-fat diets at all. And we see, in the developing world, or I shouldn't say the developing world, they're just the, impoverished areas of the world, people with all these physical deformities, they're being born physically deformed because they didn't have nutrients when they were growing inside. Okay? So what are the vital organs? Here we see the main ones. We've got the brain. We've got the lungs and the heart. We've got the liver and the kidneys, the stomach and the intestine, the sense organs, the eyes, the ears, the nerve endings, our fingers, our skin, right? Our skin is an organ. So the brain and the nervous system and the sense organs, nervous system. The heart and the cardiovascular system, blood movement. The lungs, the respiratory system, breathing, converting air into oxygen. Stomach, intestines, liver, pancreas, digestive system. Converting food into energy and nutrients is what the digestive system does. The respiratory system is converting air into oxygen. The nervous system is for regulating. It's the brain. It's the computer, right? And the heart is for moving blood, which is like, that's how the energy gets delivered around the body. The muscular skeletal system, our skin and flesh and bone and blood, and of course the reproductive system. So the digestive system is composed of our mouth, our throat, our stomach, our liver, our pancreas, and small and large intestine. Two parts to digestion: breaking the food down and then absorbing it. So the stomach and large intestine aid in digestion by breaking food down. The small intestine works with the liver to extract food nutrients to be delivered in the body. Digestion and absorption are the names given to the processes that take place when we eat food and our bodies convert the food into energy. Digestion is the process of breaking food down into small molecules, and absorption is the process whereby food molecules enter our bloodstream so that the body may benefit from the nutrients they contain. Different food nutrients are absorbed by the body differently. So, for those that are really into Chinese traditional medicine and they're looking for those exciting, exotic kinds of foods that they can't get at the supermarket, those rare, exotic nutrients. Common nutrients, ones that are required by the body daily, include amino acids, glucose, fatty acids, vitamin A, B, and C, and you can get that all right here, right there. You don't need to go hunting. So, as we see in the diagram here, we got the mouth, the salivary glands, esophagus, stomach. The food goes into the stomach. It's kind of broken down. And then into the intestines. There's a large intestine, a small intestine. The large intestine does more of the breaking down chemically, I suppose. And then the small intestine is where the nutrients are extracted, again, chemically. I'm not going to explain that. It goes into the liver, and then it goes into the bloodstream. So what are nutrients? Specifically, what are nutrients? Amino acids, vitamin A, B, C, D and E and K, protein, carbohydrates, hormones, and how food affects the brain. They say mind over matter, but really food is what affects the brain. So, nutrition is the science of how the ingredients in the food we eat are used by our bodies. So, the task of nutrition is to figure out which foods provide our bodies with energy, as well as the building material that we need to grow, and the chemicals that maintain healthy organ and brain. Nutrients are chemical substances that our body uses to build and repair tissues, said in another way. Nutrients are needed to power our basic bodily processes. Breathing, there's all kinds of chemical processes going on in breathing. Thinking, All kinds of chemical processes going on. Seeing and hearing and smelling and tasting. Moving our muscles. Eating and digestion. Men and women have different bodies outside and inside. Inside our bodies, we have glands that produce hormones that tell our bodies to grow. Men and women have different nutritional needs to support healthy hormonal functioning. So, generally speaking, women require more fat in their diets to support healthy hormonal functioning. Women's bodies tend to be higher in estrogen, the estrogen hormone, which is why women tend to feel strong emotions, and is also critical to the woman's ability to bear children. Men's bodies tend to be higher in testosterone. Testosterone is needed to build muscle mass. This is why men are physically stronger and have larger bodies than women. And there are certain types. So estrogen and testosterone are chemicals or hormones that our body produces by themselves. There are certain foods that raise these levels, and we need to be careful of, if we're men, not to consume estrogen. It can cause us cancer. Actually, estrogen can cause cancer in women too. Plastics and processed foods contain estrogen. Testosterone is a little harder to acquire. Testosterone is naturally produced when we exercise and we consume certain kinds of animal proteins. So, especially important for children. Again, feeding your children packaged foods that contain the synthetic estrogen is going to screw them up. And it's going to screw you up too. Hormones are what tell the body how to grow, and they're most active when we are in adolescence. So, hormones are needed to help us learn, sleep, and wake up. Again, if you're having some kind of sleeping problem, see a nutritionist before you see the psychiatrist. Or just take a walk for 20 minutes. That might be enough. Examples of examples of hormones that give us different mental states include dopamine, endorphins, adrenaline, oxytocin, and serotonin. So those micronutrients that we get in citrus fruits and vegetables and so on will definitely help our bodies regulate these kinds of hormones that we need to sleep and wake up. And now we can watch a video.
If you sucked all of the moisture out of your brain and broke it down to its constituent nutritional content, what would it look like? Most of the weight of your dehydrated brain would come from fats, also known as lipids. In the remaining brain matter, you would find proteins and amino acids, traces of micronutrients, and glucose. The brain is, of course, more than just the sum of its nutritional parts, but each component does have a distinct impact on functioning, development, mood, and energy. So that post-lunch apathy or late-night alertness you might be feeling, well, that could simply be the effects of food on your brain. Of the fats in your brain, the superstars are omegas 3 and 6. These essential fatty acids, which have been linked to preventing degenerative brain conditions, must come from our diets. So eating omega-rich foods like nuts, seeds, and fatty fish is crucial to the creation and maintenance of cell membranes. And while omegas are good fats for your brain, long-term consumption of other fats, like trans and saturated fats, may compromise brain health. Meanwhile, proteins and amino acids, the building block nutrients of growth and development, manipulate how we feel and behave. Amino acids contain the precursors to neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that carry signals between neurons, affecting things like mood, sleep, attentiveness, and weight. They're one of the reasons we might feel calm after eating a large plate of pasta, or more alert after a protein-rich meal. The complex combinations of compounds in food can stimulate brain cells to release mood-altering norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin. But getting to your brain cells is tricky, and amino acids have to compete for limited access. A diet with a range of foods helps maintain a balanced combination of brain messengers and keeps your mood from getting skewed in one direction or the other. Like the other organs in our bodies, our brains also benefit from a steady supply of micronutrients. Antioxidants in fruits and vegetables strengthen the brain to fight off free radicals that destroy brain cells, enabling your brain to work well for a longer period of time. And without powerful micronutrients like the vitamins B6, B12, and folic acid, our brains would be susceptible to brain disease and mental decline. Trace amounts of the minerals iron, copper, zinc, and sodium are also fundamental to brain health and early cognitive development. In order for the brain to efficiently transform and synthesize these valuable nutrients, it needs fuel, and lots of it. While the human brain only makes up about 2% of our body weight, it uses up to 20% of our energy resources. Most of this energy comes from carbohydrates that our body digests into glucose or blood sugar. The frontal lobes are so sensitive to drops in glucose, in fact, that a change in mental function is one of the primary signals of nutrient deficiency. Assuming that we are getting glucose regularly, how does the specific type of carbohydrates we eat affect our brains? Carbs come in 3 forms: starch, sugar, and fiber. While on most nutrition labels, they are all lumped into one total carb count, the ratio of the sugar and fiber subgroups to the whole amount affect how the body and brain respond. A high glycemic food, like white bread, causes a rapid release of glucose into the blood, and then comes the dip. Blood sugar shoots down, and with it, our attention span and mood. On the other hand, oats, grains, and legumes have slower glucose release, enabling a steadier level of attentiveness. For sustained brain power, opting for a varied diet of nutrient-rich foods is critical. When it comes to what you bite, chew, and swallow, your choices have a direct and long-lasting effect on the most powerful organ in your body.
Basic food types: calories, stimulants, essential nutrients. We've all seen the food pyramid before. It's an old model. Our modern day nutrition science is far more complex, but it's founded on this model here. We should we should restrict our consumption of sweets and things that are high in that simple carbohydrate, sugar. It's too much energy all at once, basically. Everyone who's ever eaten a tub of ice cream in one sitting knows it sure is great for the first 10 minutes, and then you are really suffering for the next day, I think. As your body recovers from all of that chemical overdose. Meats and eggs, the animal proteins, basically. Milk, cheese, and yogurt is a different kind of an animal protein, but it's higher in glucose. So there's less glucose or less sugar, I suppose, in the meats and eggs, as opposed to what you would get in fats in milk and cheese and yogurt. Fruits and vegetables contain the fiber and the vitamins, the micronutrients, and the carbohydrates. And bread is another form of carbohydrate, basically. So sweets, fats, dairy, fruits, vegetables, grains. Calories. We've all seen and wondered what a calorie is, and if we want to look better and feel better, how many calories we can get safely without hurting ourselves or if we only have a little bit of money, what can we buy that contains the most calories, the most value? Well, what are calories? Nutritionists define calories as the body's ability to do work. The amount of energy in food is measured in kilocalories. Calories are measured by the amount of heat produced when the food is burned or metabolized by our bodies. I couldn't explain it any better than that. If you are between the ages of 19 and 30, and you are only doing light work, like you're sitting mostly, you should try to keep your calorie intake at about 2,400. If you like to do a lot of sport, you can take it up to 3,000. If you're trying to put on muscle through strength conditioning, you can go up to 35, but don't go above that per day. As the older you get, the metabolism slows down, so you decrease a little bit. But anyway, I'm sorry, I don't have the female. I should have. I messed it up. But I think females is like maybe 2/3 of that. So if you're a female, maybe you need about 18 to 2,200. If you're male, you need about 24 to 28, I guess. So certain kinds of foods are higher in caloric content than others. For example, an ounce of food that is rich in fat has a higher caloric content than an ounce of foods containing simple carbohydrates like white bread and snack foods, or a banana or whatever, right? Carbohydrates have fewer calories than fats. So if you really just want a little snack, but you want it to last a long time, eat something that is high in fat. And if you need quick energy as you're working, like first thing in the morning, you're going out, have a piece of bread, I guess, because you're going to be using that energy immediately. So foods that are readily converted into energy are carbohydrates. They can quickly be broken down into glucose, which can be absorbed into the bloodstream to fuel our cells. But food manufacturers often sell us snack foods that contain mostly carbohydrates derived from grains like, corn or wheat, and sugars to satisfy our hunger. Like late at night, it's nice to have a piece of chocolate. There's actually nothing wrong with that. But eating too many of these foods over time can be very harmful to our digestive and hormonal systems. Most importantly, the hormonal systems. So yes, you might get fat, but pay attention to what sugar does, as you saw, to your mental mood. It makes you crazy. Stimulants. Food and drink manufacturers also use additives, most commonly caffeine, that excite and stimulate the brain. Again, the game is to trick you into thinking that their food gives you energy when you need it to perform. And perhaps it does, but it doesn't do it in the right way. It causes damage, or it causes fatigue, and doesn't replenish the body in terms of repairing its organs. Caffeine is naturally found in coffee and tea, and an adult can safely drink 1 or 2 cups of coffee throughout the day. But caffeine is hidden in many kinds of foods, so you have to pay attention to your food labels to understand what kinds of foods contain caffeine and to limit how much of these you're having. Essential food nutrients. A food nutrient is a chemical substance that comes from the food you eat. The energy you need for the metabolic processes in your body for maintaining constant internal environment comes from these nutrients. The basic processes going on derived from the nutrients. 6 essential nutrients are, let's start at the top on the left, fats. You can find fats in animal products, fish and cheese and meats and milk. And you can also find it in nuts, although it's not a complete fat. So you have to get animal products. I'm sorry if you think that you can be a vegetarian. But you're not getting complete protein. Vitamins. You don't need a whole lot of them, but if you vary the kinds of foods that you eat, you will be getting enough of them as needed. We will have time. Stick around. I have another video to show. Just stick around. So as we can see, like the brightly colored citrus fruits are fantastic. The berries, oranges and strawberries and lemons and blueberries, just magically full of vitamins that are good for the brain. Proteins, similar to fats, containing protein instead of fat. And carbohydrates, water. Okay, so the macronutrients are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And this is just what you need to be having like 60-70% of in your diet. And then the water, probably 10-15% in micronutrients. Macronutrients include carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. They are called macronutrients because they are required in large amounts to fuel the body, or larger amounts. These kinds of foods we should be eating in order to get the energy needed to do work. Micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals required by your body to produce enzymes, hormones, so if you want to get your carbohydrates, get your breads, get your grains, get your seeds. Seeds are good. They contain carbohydrates and, seeds are good because they contain macronutrients and micronutrients. Fat. So fat, fat is a component of our cell membranes. So those people who don't get fats in their diet because they can't afford to, or because they're trying to diet, or hurting all the cells in their body. It's very painful. And it's also needed to take up vitamins so your digestion system isn't going to work, and you're going to have organ failure, or your brain is going to really feel a lot of stress. It's going to be producing hormones that are actually going to make you feel in pain, and you're going to be producing like hormones that are going to cause your body to put on fat. This is why dieting to lose fat is very ineffective. Now you can eat less, but you have to pay attention to getting those fats. And proteins. Proteins are used as a building element. So our cells are always dying and replenishing. So protein is needed for that. And athletes and bodybuilders use protein to build new muscle mass. But too much protein and it just gets converted into fat. It's all about timing. It's all about timing when you need energy, right before or after you do some work, and giving the body the protein then, and then it will be converted into the building, the tissue for building muscle. But if you just eat it at a random time of the day, it's probably just going to be stored as fat. These are the micronutrients, the vitamins, and the minerals. So we see off to the left, vitamin A, vitamin B, there's a lot of vitamin Bs, and vitamin C, and vitamin D, and vitamin E. If you'd like to get this, I'll send you the link to the group, and I'll send that to you. And the minerals, calcium, iron, it's really for the blood and the immune system. I'm not going to talk about micronutrients too much because I actually don't know anything about them. Just organic compounds that the body needs in small amounts can help with the immune system and the brain. Okay, so I'm going to play this video, and then we'll be finished.
Micronutrients. Micronutrients are chemical substances required in very small amounts for good growth and development of living organisms, including humans. Deficiency in these elements has far-reaching health consequences. Micronutrients help in production of enzymes and hormones in the body. Enzymes aid in metabolism, and hormones directly impact growth, fertility, and metabolism. The functioning of the immune system is also linked to micronutrients. As a result, vulnerable groups such as children, pregnant women, and the elderly require increased micronutrient intake. Micronutrients are classified as minerals and vitamins. There are two forms of minerals, macrominerals and microminerals. Macrominerals are required in the body in larger amounts. They include calcium, potassium, sodium, magnesium, and phosphorus. Microminerals include iron, zinc, and iodine. There are two forms of vitamins as well, water-soluble and fat-soluble vitamins. Vitamin B complex and vitamin C are the only water-soluble vitamins. Water-soluble vitamins require water to be transported in the body. As such, they are easily lost through urination and perspiration. Daily intake of vitamin B complex and vitamin C is therefore highly recommended. Fat-soluble vitamins are A, D, E, and K. They can be stored in the body with a risk of toxicity. Thus, daily intake is not necessary. Fish, dairy products, dark green vegetables, and citrus fruits are some of the rich sources of micronutrients. However, all foods have traces of micronutrients. Noteworthy, non-food sources of micronutrients in form of supplements such as multivitamins are widely in use. However, they should be used if and only recommended by a health professional.
So, for micronutrients, you're wondering, like, how many berries do I need to be eating? What kind of leafy greens, spinachy, asparagus should I be eating? Anything that's green, dark green is good. In small amounts, don't overdo it. Contains too much fiber. Fiber is needed for digestion, that's about it. So, it's good to have some leafy greens. It's really good to have the brightly colored citrus fruits. Tea, green tea, black tea, maca tea contains a lot of micronutrients and things called antioxidants, which help to clean the toxins that we get from the environment out of our blood. The nuts contain the proteins and the vitamins. Fish contains these, and the omega fatty acids. So you can get, fat from animal products, but you can also get it from nuts and fish. So if you want to be a vegetarian, you should at least have fish. Eggs contain a kind of vitamin D, I think, and cholesterol, which is actually needed. People say eggs are actually very, very good. So these are the sorts of things. I don't know. You can experiment with it. Just keep an open mind and just try to vary it up a little bit. If that's too much work, you can always get a supplement like a multivitamin at your pharmacist. But the first thing you should do is citrus fruits, berries, nuts. These are the snacks, and then your protein, meats, and carbohydrates from rice, with a healthy amount of oil meets your macronutrient needs. And we're at time. So, if you enjoyed this and you want to get the lesson notes and you haven't joined the group already, here's your chance. And next week we will be of course, if you have any questions, you can reach me there too. And next week we will be talking about popular music, something not scientific. Or maybe it will be, because there is a science. Music is a very scientific art form. Thanks, everyone. Nuts contain these omega oils, which are necessary for the brain. I don't know much more about that. I don't eat a lot of nuts. I don't think I digest nuts very well. It's different for everyone. I don't particularly like nuts, but I do like some kinds of seeds. Any other questions? Okay. Good night. Thank you for coming.